Welcome back to the What About AI podcast. I'm Sean,
Hey guys, I'm James Perkins.
and the topic that we have for you today is basically what happened in Davos, Switzerland, at the World Economic Forum. The general theme of the meeting was essentially that AI anxiety is rising and rising at a significant pace. Got a couple of statistics here, and then James, I'm curious to hear your thoughts in terms of like what you read about the event or saw as well also. But some consulting companies were saying that the concern that employees have about job loss due to AI has risen dramatically by about 50% in less than 2 years. And over 60% of employees feel leaders underestimate AI's emotional and psychological impact. Curious, for everything that you saw that happened at the forum, what's your takeaway? Is that kind of the consensus you got as well?
Well, the speakers didn't hold back a whole lot this year in terms of what they were seeing, what they expected AI to do in the near future. So Dario Amodei, the head of Anthropic Claude, and Demis Hassabis, the head of Google Gemini, had a separate panel where they talked about what they see for jobs in the next 3 to 5 years. And they kept repeating, we would like it to take longer, but we expect it to actually happen soon. Like we expect software engineering jobs to be disrupted over the course of the next year. And they pointed to junior devs and, college grads, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. In other conversations, there were philosophers, historians, several scientists from different fields, folks from MIT. I saw a particular interesting conversation from one party that said, actually it was Demis Hassabis, who said that he can't say anything for sure, but he can guarantee that anyone that has a career now, if they want to survive in their workplace, is going to have to learn continually. And he emphasized that 2 or 3 times during his speech. So I think that's the biggest takeaway is if you want to survive in this new AI world, you got to keep learning.
Excellent point, and agreed. Certainly has felt that way for probably us for most of our career having been in tech, but things are certainly accelerating now, and I feel like it's a bit more widespread. So I feel like I'm feeling the anxiety just from the folks that I interact with. So it's interesting to see that many world leaders come together and address that head on the way that they did, because I do believe it's real. And I think there's a lot of changes underway, which is largely part of the reason for why folks are feeling that way. And
Well,
in
the other thing
fact,
is, go ahead, sorry.
no, that's okay. I was just going to quote some of the folks, some of the takeaways there from the leaders who had attended, which essentially kind of delivered a similar sentiment. But the IMF managing director said, quote, most countries and most businesses are not prepared for it. Deutsche Bank analysts, anxiety about AI will go from a low hum to a loud roar this year, and on and on and on.
Yeah, that's what we're seeing, right? So Sam Altman, who doesn't often hold back, has made some bold statements in the past, basically said, look at your work. If you think what you're doing isn't real work, it will be replaced very soon. He didn't give a timeline, but he said very soon. And Musk, who I'd say over the past 3 weeks has become much more aggressive in his predictions, effectively said that AI and robots will replace every job. He didn't have, when you and I talk, we have exclusions. Like, oh, veterinarians likely stick around, probably geriatric care, maybe folks that do management of like large estates, like, major gardens that are like the DuPont gardens, that sort of thing. But he didn't say that. He said every single job will get replaced. So it's just a matter of when. And he got pushed a few times on timelines. He said within 10 years, every job. Within 3 years, many jobs. He wasn't holding back. So anxiety should be running high right now. They're basically saying, here's what you should expect within the next 3 to 5 years. And it sounds like no one's going to have work.
Yeah, that's a dark future, and it's interesting. I see them being pushed for context around the timelines, and I definitely acknowledge the fact that they're all saying soon, but not saying exactly when. Although soon's probably alarming enough. So I don't know if this is counterpoint or another topic largely that was basically just kind of a theme coming out of the forum, but question of whether or not that anxiety and the worry is overblown or it's real. That's another one I want to talk about as well too. So some other quotes from the forum. Randstad CEO came out and said the role of AI in job cuts is being, quote, overstated. I know this is a topic that we've talked about as well also from Deutsche Bank. They are calling it, and I haven't heard this phrase yet before, but I get the idea, AI redundancy washing. That's an interesting way to describe this, but basically companies blaming AI for cuts that aren't really AI driven. So curious to know more about maybe counterpoint there. Like, what do you think is a realistic timeline here based on everything you're seeing that we're evaluating? And how do you think that ties into, basically being part of the narrative for what's essentially and how real that is versus the cuts they're actively making now?
I think it's very real. So one of my friends, I actually went out last night, a rare occasion, and had a good time with a friend, and we're talking about the near future. And one of the comments he made was, if they announced that aliens were real, like interdimensional beings were real, would it even affect anyone's life right now? Like he's basically said everyone would just go, I have enough going on. I can't deal with this. I think people are treating all of this AI news that way. But the difference is this is going to have very sudden impacts on almost everyone. Like you're not just going to see adoption for this new technology as slow as you've seen in the past for other things. This isn't the internet. This isn't the invention of the computer. This is something that isn't going to be a tool that we use. It's basically its own life form, and it's smarter than us and better than us. Maybe not yet, but it will be in a year or 2 years' time. So I think, yes, I think some of the layoffs you heard from this past year may have been masked by saying, oh, it's efficiency from AI. That's probably true from this past year. But for this year and next year, I don't think so. I think those will be actual layoffs due to the advancement of AI being able to automate so much digital work. This year and next year will be digital work. I think the year after, 28, 29, will be physical work where you're actually physically moving things with robots. And that could be factory jobs, plumbing jobs, HVAC, you name it. But I think this year and next, you're going to see a ton of knowledge workers being laid off due to AI, actually.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. I think it's very real. AI disruption for basically knowledge work, and then robotics probably not far behind for anything labor related. So I think I have a tendency to believe my instinct tells me based on what I've seen that even if the layoffs right now are not directly related to AI, they will be. So it's only a matter of time. It's all essentially going to be connected, AI and robotics and all this automation, this wave of automation that we're seeing. So some signals, and I've got a couple other stats to throw at you here, which are really interesting in terms of what we're seeing basically from the investor community related to this. So this is reported by CNBC, but they said 97% of investors said funding decisions would be negatively impacted by firms that fail to upskill workers on AI, which is a crazy high statistic. And I think my takeaway from this, curious on your perspective of how you see kind of the investor community responding here, because I know there's been a lot of reporting out there about what does the uptake actually look like and how quickly are companies adapting, how effectively are they really able to upskill their workforce. But the translation here, I think, which is pretty dramatic, I think, is that investors are either planning or already going to be punishing companies that are not training their people.
100%. I mean, think about in your personal life, day to day, right? If you're spending $20 or $100 on one of these pro subscriptions to any of the AIs, Grok, Gemini, Claude, ChatGPT, you are getting so much value for that money. You're getting answers to questions instantly that would have taken you a long time to research on your own or go investigate personally. So investors want that same value from businesses. And when you're a publicly traded company, especially, you're expected to show efficiency gains when new technology comes around. So you can't be a company that like pushes back on AI adoption if the rest of the market is beating you. And I think it's going to be a domino effect. Once one company that has several competitors starts using AI, the competitors are going to have to follow suit very quickly. And of course, they'll get punished if they're not doing that because, one developer leveraging AI, which we've seen personally, can do 10 times the work as much as a developer that's avoiding AI or doing it themselves, even if they're experts in their field. I mean, at the end of the day, a lot of the code you write isn't that meaningful. It just needs to be done. You're doing cleanup work, you're doing CSS formatting, you're doing all kinds of layout decisions for a website that take a lot of time, and AI can do that instantaneously with a prompt. So if you're not using AI in your workplace, you are going to be punished personally, professionally, and as a business.
I think that's good advice, tough but fair advice. That's how I'm thinking of it as well. And that's kind of where I wanted to go next to start to kind of wrap things up here. But how should our listeners be thinking about this information and what does it realistically mean for them in terms of getting prepared, keeping track of how their company is responding? Because I feel like the responsibility on the worker side now goes even beyond what it is they need to do to upskill and or train themselves. I know there's a lot of like I think they call it shadow IT operations out there now. Companies are struggling with that because they're bringing in, muted versions of the technology today because they're trying to maybe put some controls in place or they're just not giving proper access to their workforce, which is limiting their capabilities, especially if they're, pursuing those independently as well too, and they compare the two. But, it seems like the anxiety is probably valid, but now is for sure the time for action on the employee side, not just personally, but from keeping track of what their company is doing as well too, because if they're not responding quickly enough, they could essentially fall victim to their lack of readiness is kind of how I'm thinking of it. What's your take?
Oh, 100%. I think you're right. I mean, so many companies are neutering the AI solution they have internally for all kinds of legal and regulatory reasons. And it's that that methodology, that approach, that mentality has helped them in business for the past 20, 30 years. It's not going to help them with AI. There's like there's no reason to put the same amount of restrictions on an engineering implementation for AI as there is for a general product or um, program management team within the business. So there's differentiation between which tools and features and functionalities have to exist for different teams within the firm or any company. And I see a lot. You're right. I see a lot of companies that are messing that up. And if people's personal AI can do more than their internal corporate AI, they're going to start putting more corporate data into their personal AI tools, even if it's banned
Yep.
internally, because it's very hard to track. So I think companies have to get smart about bringing in folks that can assess the environment, figure out what is necessary in terms of level of autonomy for the AI, and then train their team to use it. Because right now, even folks that have access don't necessarily know what to ask AI and when to ask AI. It's getting really tricky. And if companies aren't staying ahead of that curve, they're not going to have time to catch up. Things are changing so fast.
Well said. And I would add to that as well for our listeners on the employee side, you need to probably be more proactive, even if your company is not, to protect yourself. For and in
Yes.
the event of that company not being proactive enough themselves. So don't necessarily wait for them to respond. Your company responds proactively, great, but if they don't, do so yourself to protect yourself in case they can't keep up or they struggle and ultimately you have to go somewhere else. You're going to want to have those skills and be prepared for it. Very good. I think that's good for this topic. Let me know if there's anything else you want to add before we wrap up.
Yeah, I think the one thing I would add is we have tools for folks to figure out how to use everything available today. So it's changing so fast. There's 6 major AI companies. It's hard to keep up for us. And we're eat, sleeping, and breathing this every day. So if you want sort of a curated list of what matters for you personally in your career, we're offering that now. Go to whataboutai.com. If you're asking yourself, what about AI's impact on my career? We can tell you exactly what's happening day by day. Don't wait. I mean, sign up now. There's a free newsletter and there's a paid newsletter. Even if you choose the unpaid option, the free option, you're going to get a lot of helpful information that keeps you relevant in your position, in your job, and keeps your livelihood active for as long as possible through this entire transition.